Высоких должностей. Высоких должностей в его биографии не меньше, чем уголовных дел. 92-й год. В родном Казахстане Мухтар Аблязов создает компанию «Астана Холдинг», пытаясь захватить не только агропромышленный, но и автомобильный, банковский и даже медийный рынок страны. Спустя 5 лет амбиции Аблязова приводят его на пост президента национальной казахстанской компании-оператора магистральных электросетей. В 96-м году он попадет в кресло министра энергетики и торговли Казахстана. По сути, доступ ко всей нефтегазовой промышленности республики. Невзирая на обещание ввести рыночные принципы формирования тарифов, по факту Аблязов пытается необоснованно их завышать, что становится причиной его дальнейшей отставки. Лишившись хлебной должности, экс-министр становится одним из главных критиков Назарбаева. Параллельно на родине против него уголовное дело. Аблязову вменяют крупные хищения и создание преступной группировки. В 2002 году суд признает его виновным и приговорит к 6 годам заключения, из которых фактически за решеткой он проведет всего лишь год. На сторону воровавшегося экс-чиновника встанет Госдеп США и Европейский парламент, объявив Аблязова узником совести. Впрочем, помилование совести Аблязову не на свободу он ненадолго уезжает в Россию, не оставляя попытки вернуть былое влияние. Ему это удастся. В 2005-м Аблязов возглавит крупнейший частный банк республики БТА, сменив на этой должности Ержана Татищева при невероятностях погибшего на охоте. К 2009 году Аблязов получит 75% акций банка. Спустя год, в 2010-м, он поспешно эмигрирует на Запад, получив политическое убежище в Британии. Казахский суд признает его виновным в хищении 7 миллиардов средств и приговорит к 20 годам лишения свободы. Правда, уже заочно. Его экстрадиции с Запада не сможет добиться российская сторона. Виновным в многомиллионных махинациях он и на территории РФ. По данным следствия, в период с 2006-2009 годы Аблязов вместе с подельниками похитил из средств БТА банка более 50 миллиардов рублей, выдавая кредиты под залог земельных участков в Домодедовском районе Московской области, приобретенных под заемные деньги. Позже действие ипотечных договоров прекращалось. Банк лишался возможности взыскания залога, а имущество Аблязов реализовывал третьим лицам. Экстрадиция Аблязова требовала и Украина. Мошеннические схемы БТА банка Аблязов проворачивал и в Незалежной, используя местную фармацевтическую компанию для похищенных денег. Всего в отмытии участвовало свыше 1000 подставных фирм по всему миру. По данным украинских юристов, английские суды все-таки признали Аблязова виновным и обязали вернуть БТА банку почти 5 миллиардов долларов, приговорив беглого олигарха к 22 месяцам тюрьмы. Срок отбывать Аблязов не стал, сбежав по поддельным документам во Францию. В 2013 году он все-таки был арестован и 3,5 года содержался в тюрьме. В 2015 году по запросу России Лионский суд принял решение об экстрадиции мошенника, но спустя год уже суд Парижа отказал выдавать его, объясняя это политическими мотивами России при подаче запроса. В 2000 без того внушительный список уголовных дел пополнился и обвинением в организации убийства. Казахский бизнесмен Муратхан Токмади дал показания против Аблязова, заявив, что убил бывшего главу БТА банка Татищева по требованию экс-министра. Аблязов угрожал Токмади физической разнял к нему пытки, требуя застрелить Татищева, чтобы Аблязов мог занять желанный пост. По этому делу в Казахстане Аблязов приговорен к пожизненному заключению, что, впрочем, никак не помешало ему спустя 2 года в 2020-м получить статус политического беженца еще во Франции. Варвара Невская. Вместе.
Мы работаем для тех, кто не хочет отставать от времени. 60 минут, смотрим .ру. Просто наведите It's been called the Queen of Instruments. But what makes the organ so magnificent? From the softest pianissimo to thundering fortissimo, it can produce a range of sounds unmatched by any other instrument. The organ owes its rich sound to its many different pipes, which they when played. Organists employ their hands and feet to operate the instrument's multiple keyboards. Ludwig is a Protestant cantor and organ specialist in Prenzlau, a town north of Berlin. His parish church is putting on an afternoon concert. There are some 200 churches in this district, and each one has an organ. It accompanies the congregation during church services and provides solace to the faithful from baptism to death. However, many of these organs are showing their age, and many are in need of repair. So Ludwig's expertise is required at least once a month.
We're on our way to Joachimsthal. The parish there asked if I could come and take a look at the organ, because they want to refurbish it. It's on its last pipes, so to speak. They'd like to renovate the church's interior at the same time, so of course it would be great if both things could be done together.
The church's interior needs a complete overhaul. Mr. David Kopale still lacks the funds, especially for the restoration of the organ. It dates from 1820, was built by a master craftsman from a neighbouring town. His method was to copy existing organs right down to the smallest detail.
It sounds like there's still plenty of old substance there. Let's take a look inside. As you can see, it's terribly dirty here. That the pipes managed to produce any sound at all is pretty amazing.
The Protestant churches in Berlin and Brandenburg are thought to house around 2,000 organs. They've witnessed numerous eras and dramatic changes in musical tastes. When churches had money, they adapted their organs with the times by replacing the pipes, for instance. Yet many parishes, especially those in former East Germany, lacked the funds to do it, so instruments like this one are still in their original condition.
Auch ganz alt, 1820 from Torlai. This one's really old too, 1820 from Torlai. The reed pipe with a little pipe on top. Auch komplett vorhanden. They're all there. Alles alt. All old. The organ's in pitiful condition. It just barely works, and it's terribly out of tune because the entire wind system is no longer airtight, and the pipes are incredibly dirty. You can tell it hasn't had a good in a long time. That it survived the war virtually unscathed, and it would absolutely be retained and restored. Das sollte man auf jeden Fall erhalten und restaurieren.
Mary of the Assumption in the Bavarian town of Fürstenfeldbruck was built as a church. Its elaborate interior was designed by the Azam brothers. The two architects are considered important representatives of the German late Baroque. The organ was styled to match with ornamental embellishments. The well-known organ builder Jörg Fuchs was responsible for this instrument's outstanding sound, which still impresses organist Christoph Hauser today.
Wir haben
Here at the former monastery Fürstenfeld Abbey, we have a very special organ. It dates from the time of the church's construction, yet is still in almost original condition, just as it was planned and conceived. The foundation stone for the church was laid in 1700, and the organ was inaugurated in 1736.
eingeweiht. Ich höre den Klang dieser
I the sound of this organ from 1,000 recordings straight away. It has specific overtones which are typical for organs built in southern Germany. A certain sonority, but also in polish. It's a mixture that produces some really special here.
besonders speziell präsentiert.
It's a testament to Bavarian organ building in the Baroque period. Organ music was acquiring new meaning, especially for Protestants. Composers like Bach wrote masterpieces for choir and organ.
Johann Sebastian Bach hat zwar gelebt,
Johann Sebastian Bach was still alive when this organ was being built, but these were separate worlds. First there was the North-South divide, then the Protestant-Catholic one. Back then the organ was much more important, but these were separate worlds. The South then, back then the organ was much more important in the Protestant liturgy, but at a monastery like this one, it played a subordinate role. Here the Gregor is still the most important thing.
das Wichtigste.
So the organ music simply served as a tonal embellishment here, while in Protestant northern Germany, the organ choir and congregational singing were becoming a standard part of the liturgy in church services. Like the music itself, the art of organ building also made great strides during the late Baroque period at the turn of the century. The organ's mechanics grew more refined and the instruments became even larger, and they grew in popularity across Europe.
Jede Region in der Welt,
Every region in the world had its own organ sound.
also eine
A French Baroque organ sounds completely different from an Italian one, and this Bavarian Fuchs organ also has, in contrast to the French organ, which has many trumpets integrated into it, here flutes. That's a big difference, which makes for a much softer sound.
Every organ consists of many different pipes. Depending on their size and the materials from which they're made, they produce the sound all their own. Even a mid-sized organ has not several hundred, but several thousand pipes, and the largest of these can be over 10 meters long. This workshop near Munich is one of 400 organ building businesses in Germany. Here, every instrument is one of a kind, custom made to meet the needs of a specific church or space. Christoph Katz has been building and restoring organs for over 30 years.
Now we're inside the organ in its casing. This is one of the wind chests. The wind chest holds all the organ's pipes. The pipe will later go into each one of these holes. And with these sliders, when the stops are pulled, you can select the sound.
Pipes of the same type are grouped together on the wind chest, what's called a rank or stop. Each one is named after its sound. For instance, there are trumpet stops and flute stops. The organ operates according to the same principle as it did when it was invented over 2,000 years ago. The control of pressurized air flows into the various pipes to produce the sound.
This is one of the many bellows which are filled with air by the blower and can then supply the pipes with wind.
The organ operated via a console. It usually has several keyboards resembling those on a piano. Pressing on a key that lets air flow into a pipe. By pulling out the stops, the organist can choose which pipes are to be played.
Organ, the observer only sees the first rank, namely the pipes at the front. But that's only one rank. The many other ranks, the many higher pipes all stand behind that. Durable, if they're not ruined by heating systems, a well-made one can easily last for over 3 years.
Eben is a renowned organist and cembalist based in Cologne. One of his favourite organs stands in the St. Andreas Protestant Church in the village of Ostturnen.
This organ is very special because, in parts, it's actually the oldest organ in the world. The wood was tested, and it was actually possible to see that the tree used to make the wind chest was felled in 1410. Since the wood was always seasoned for roughly 15 years, we can assume that this organ was made around 1425. And most of the pipes date from that time. You can tell that from the way they're constructed, from the workmanship. They're typical for the Gothic period. So pipes are also the world's oldest, dating from around 1425.
However, the organ was only installed at the St. Andreas Church in Ostturnen in 1721. It was already some 300 years old by then. The Romanesque church itself has remained largely unchanged since it was first built. Little is known about the music that was played in churches like this in the 15th century. The organs left virtually no musical notation behind.
Back then, it's probable that they mainly improvised. Today, we have the image of people coming to the organ with a pile of sheet music. But until well into the 18th century, it was normal that the organists played whatever they found at an instrument, and they improvised. And that was what people learned when they took lessons somewhere. They learned to compose and to improvise, though in practice, they mainly improvised.
And it was in the church that the organ's great potential was recognized. It allowed musicians to do something that could normally only be done with singing, having different voices resounding at once. The organ's emergence as an instrument in Europe coincided with the rise of polyphony in the sacred music of the Middle Ages. Concert singing was a model for the organ to follow.
Without religion and the practice of it, I'd say without church services, this music wouldn't exist. Without them, there'd have been no Bach cantatas, and no St. Matthew Passion either. Religious music is made for an occasion, for a church service.
Church services are at the heart of my work here, and I love them. I'm a church musician, body and soul, and I think it's great to ensure that there's a thread to guide people through the entire service. And as a church musician, you can really move people and give them something to take away with them.
Andreas Zieling is the organist at the Berlin Cathedral. It dates from the turn of the 20th century, and the organ is the largest from that time, still in its original condition.
Wilhelm Sauer hat die Orgel im Berliner Dom 1900.
Wilhelm Sauer built the organ in the Berlin Cathedral in 1905.
Es ist ein Spätroman.
It's the biggest one he ever. It's a late Romantic organ, a highlight from the period. This type of organ tries to imitate an orchestra. It makes the wafting of the Holy Spirit manifest. This instrument moves listeners quite intensely, especially with the lower notes that reverberate in your stomach, right through to the tones that test the limits of our hearing at the upper end.
Und natürlich,
And of course, the instrument has the power to fill the entire space with sound.
den ganzen Raum mit Klang zu füllen.
Around 100 new church organs are built each year in Germany. The art of organ building continues to evolve because behind every instrument there's an organ builder with their own ideas.
Entweder baut man ein Instrument nach einem bestimmten
Either you build an instrument in a specific style, copy the style of a classical French organ, for example, or a romantic organ, or you go in a completely different direction and say an organ on which you can play all styles. Or yet another way, a modern route, and try to invest in as much technology as possible and use digital technology to create completely new sounds. There are wonderful examples of that, like in Kassel.
Beispiele, zum Beispiel in Kassel.
10 Jahre habe ich dieses Instrument. For 10 years, I was involved in this instrument's development. And since its completion, since 2017, working with it daily has only strengthened my connection. You delve even deeper into the instrument. You're an explorer, a researcher finding out which sounds are possible. And through diversifying into contemporary music, we have sounds that continue to astound me every day.
Eckhard Munz is the organist at St. Martin's Church in Kassel. The more than 600-year-old church was completely destroyed in the Second World War and rebuilt with modern steeples. St. Martin's is now an important centre for new music, especially during the Documenta, the major art exhibition that's held in Kassel every 5 years. The organ was custom-made by Austrian company Riga to meet the requirements of contemporary music. This organ was made for free improvisation, with any timbre or pitch being technically possible. Munz also to accompany the congregation through the liturgical year.
The bishop gives sermons here. We hold festive services and traditional concerts in which the organ always plays a major role. This isn't an instrument specific to new music. It can also do an outstanding job performing the music of Bach.
Even if traditional music can be played permanent, the organ at St. Martin's is unusual, as can be seen at first glance.
The organ seems to float behind the artificial hair hanging from the facade, which is set in motion by the wind blowing through the organ. This creates a light, airy impression that's at odds with the instrument's actual size, 25 tons, suspended on the wall here.
Like human beings, organs have lungs, their bellows, and the console that functions as a brain. And like people, every organ is unique. No two instruments are exactly alike. Their sound also differs in every region of every country, not just in Germany.
What is a German organ? That's really hard to say. It's also very linked to the region and the period. An organ from 1780 in northern Germany is very different from one in central or southern Germany. To put it simply, a northern German organ might have a slightly sharper sound. A central German one would be broader and maybe a little warmer. Every country, every region has its idiosyncrasies. They had different types of pipes and different ranks, producing other sounds to be discovered and mixed.
A village church near the town of Prenzlau in Brandenburg. Organs are still used primarily for church services or concerts of sacred music. But because there are too few organists in rural Brandenburg, Cantor Hannes Ludwig has taken it upon himself to teach young musicians the basics.
I shortened that note a little, and this one too.
Amateur organists like Florian enable rural churches to accompany their services with organ music.
I'm preparing Florian for his role in the church service. We're going through all the literature. We also talk a lot about the instrument, about the stops, which timbres should we use to accompany the congregation. It's important to coach our adjunct organists. If it weren't for them, a lot of things here would go down the tubes, so to speak.
Twice a month, Florian plays at a church service in Prenzlau, stepping in for Hannes Ludwig. For Florian, it's also a welcome opportunity to get more practice. Organ music is very much linked to religion. Even if it's no longer a strictly ecclesiastical instrument, the organ continues to be marked by its history, its liturgical functions, and, most of all, the sacred works composed for it. But at St. Martin's Church in Kassel, they've dreamed up a new concept. This lower organ, which was inaugurated on Pentecost Sunday of 2021, stands in the centre of the room. It's an open invitation for Eckhard Manns to experiment and for listeners to marvel at the results. Part of the concept is that the listeners surround the organist, who traditionally remains unseen.
We really wanted to overcome this distance. Visitors can look directly at the pipes at eye level and stand right next to the performer. That gives it an immediacy.
The organ is a musical marvel composed of pipes and keys, and its development is ongoing. While interest in traditional organ music in churches may be waning, the instrument is getting enthusiastic reception in concert halls.
The way I see it, the art of organ building unites many different art forms. It's architectural design, as well as historical confrontation, as people have been building organs for centuries. And it's a handicraft that's been handed down for centuries.
It's noteworthy that Germany employs the most organ builders. Here, almost every church, no matter how small, has an organ. As Albert Schweitzer once said, a church without an organ is like a body without a soul. It's part of it somehow.
A On no other instrument can a single musician produce sounds that are so quiet, as well as such bone-rattling loud noises. Organists have the equivalent of a huge symphony orchestra at their fingertips. No wonder the organ still retains the title, the Queen of Instruments.
Может, это ошибка, но у меня ошибка какая-то. Ну, это он с ней говорит. Ну, да. А просто понимаешь.
Получил ранение, несовместимое с жизнью. Охранитель, сотрудник телеканала Алматы Муратхан Базарбаев, попав под обстрел.
Вот на протяжении этих дней вместе с полицейскими и медиками работают журналисты. Коллеги также несут потери от рук экстремистов. Как сообщает Министерство информации и общественного развития, в результате преступных действий террористов погиб телеканала Алматы Муратхан Базарбаев.
Мирные протесты на появление телекамер рассказывают репортеры канала Астана, оператор которого был жестоко избит во время съемок алматинских погромов.
Оператор вышел с машины, и в этот момент толпы один из людей, я не знаю, можно их назвать людьми или нет, один из них выкрикнул: "Это журналисты, бейте его". Толпа людей нападает, получается, они отбирают руками, ногами, били по голове. Один из людей выскакивает с этой толпой, в руках кувалда, то ли материал, поднимает руку вверх и кричит: "Убивай их".
Разбиты и сожжены редакции телеканалов «Мир», «Евразия», «Казахстан». Не делать свою работу, показывать и рассказывать о происходящем, важная часть в Казахстане, похоже, истинные организаторы погромов, очень не хотят, чтобы о том, что на самом деле происходит в стране, узнали за ее пределами.
Там целый ряд правозащитных организаций, которые обучали нас ведению протестов против власти, как вести себя на допросах, что такое свобода религии, что такое борьба с государственными средствами массовой информации. Мы, кстати, видим, как канал разгромили в Алматы. Ровно могли дать неправильную картинку в международную телекомпанию «Мир».
О том, что стране пришлось иметь дело и с местными, и с иностранными бандитами, в своем сначала беспорядком обращении заявил Кажамар Такаев. Как стало известно, сегодня правоохранительными органами задержан вместе с 5 членами Арман Джумагильдиев, он же криминальный авторитет социалистической организации в разгар пандемии социально незащищенным жителям страны, заручился их поддержкой тех, что в момент, судя по всему,
Первый протест областей Казахстана действительно имели социальную, потому что с резким скачком цен на газ, который вырос с 1 января почти в 2 раза. Но затем силами этот протестный потенциал был использован для разжигания беспорядков в других регионах Казахстана, уже под политическими лозунгами.
Причем на самом деле считал рост цен на газ необоснованным и критическим, даже не предполагали, во что выльются якобы убийства, насилие, громы. Зашедшаяся по соцсетям видео Гульнас Махмед помогала протестующим, приносила воинство, теперь считает убытки. Магазина все, что смогли, просто уничтожили.
Меня полностью обыграли. Вот это и называется благодарность.
В Казахстане террористические банды готовят еще одно официальное заявление страны. Причем эту самую подготовку, цитируя самого Топали, хотя об опасности эксперты говорили еще прошлым летом, когда Соединенные Штаты бежали из Афганистана, оставляя за собой разграбленную страну, воспитанных ими же самими радикалов, которые хлынули через границу самих государств.
Эти трупы безголовые были обнаружены. Это почерк международных террористов. Вот. И эти террористы, которых изгнали из Сирии, перешивали в Ирак, а из Ирака в Афганистан. Они тоже стали с ними идиотами. Вот. И они их выдавили, а эти идиотцы куда делись? Они же в безвоздушном пространстве существовали. Они благополучно перешли через границы, кого-то вернули назад в Афганистан, а другие растворили. В таджикском обществе, в киргизском обществе, в казахском обществе растворились, да, и спрятались, и вели свои подрывную работу.
На то, что террористы, как в Казахстане, тщательно готовились, указывает целый ряд фактов. Экстремисты уже организованные, на правоохранителей и военных нападают пятерки. Противники обезглавливают, атакуют стратегические объекты, части на территории одной из них в Активинской области сегодня хотели проникнуть неизвестные. В Талды-Каргане бандиты попытались штурмом взять следственный изолятор, а так в городе антитеррористическое. Оставаться дома сегодня утром получили и в
Сегодня в 7 утра мне пришло такое же сообщение, что в городе проходит антитеррористическая, в Алматы идет антитеррористическая операция, оставайтесь безопасны. На самом деле мы все сейчас ответственно, который показывает, интернет, как все знают, не работает. Источник — это наша коллега, которая живет в доме на площади.
Местных жителей зачистка Алматы вооруженных погромщиков продолжается весь день. Слышны выстрелы столкновения с бандитами, военные получили приказ стрелять на поражение. Анастасия Ефимова, «Вести».
Работаем для тех, кто не хочет 50 минут на форуме. Просто наведите камеру, смартфон.
Видишь, политики как бы как не это видится. Да. Вот это он. Да. В то же время политики это тоже видели. Шака лежака.
Беспорядков задержанных в Казахстане к этой минуте. Среди них сторонники радикальных ячеек. Сейчас и параллельно с операцией продолжаются поиски вооруженных провокаторов. Ущерб предварительно в $200 миллионов. В Алматы из-за мародеров закрыли торговые магазины.
Я просто очень крутой.
Отделение банка Роберта Францева.
Продолжается контртеррористическая операция. Большая часть страны, где властям восстановить правопорядок, возвращается. Открываются, частично восстанавливается армия. Запланированы вывозные рейсы, проводят от вооруженных бандформирований. Президент Такаев заявил атаку на государство. Организовали спящие радикалов при активной поддержке извне. В нападении только на Алмату участвовали боевиков. Никаких переговоров с террористами не будет, заявил президент.
За сторонам провести переговоры для мирного. Какая глупость. Какие могут быть переговоры с преступниками, с убийцами, с вооруженными и подготовленными бандитами, как местными, так и именно с бандитами и террористами. Поэтому их нужно уничтожать. И это будет сделано в ближайшее время.
Города, разгромленные, представляют плачевное зрелище. Разграбленные, сожженных автомобилей, разрушенные объекты инфраструктуры. Сильнее всего от действий террористов нас.
Видно, это то, что я вчера тоже вышла на митинг людей, давала воду, осталось все, меня полностью обыграли.
Только по предварительным данным ущерб $1 плюс это мощный удар по имиджу государства. О статусе островка старее на время можно забыть, а это грозит потерей инвестиций и уходом за рубеж компаний. Подразделения ставленных задач. Они заключаются именно в охране стратегических объектов, а вот заниматься подавлением беспорядков.
Искреннюю благодарность министру Армении, который председательствует, а также президентам Белоруссии, особые слова благодарности адресую президенту России Владимиру оперативной и, главное, по-товарищески тепло отреагировал на мое обращение. Высказываю также благодарность председателю Китайской Народной Республики, президентам Узбекистана, Турции, руководителю Организации Объединенных Наций и других международных за слова поддержки.
На всех подъездах к столице Казахстана, городу Нур-Султану, сегодня ночью были установлены укрепленные военными. Досматриваются все автомобили. Сообщается, что несколько попыток завести в город на игру преимущественно из которые выдвигались, услышали, снижена вдвое цена на сжиженный газ. Именно этот вопрос стал от последующих событий. Расследование о монополии начата проверкой в отношении силовиков и представителей спецслужб на предмет того, как могла остаться незамеченной подготовка такой хорошо спланированной атаки.
В результате компромисс. Выработаны решения. Поэтому в регионах, где сохранена, мы поэтапно снимем чрезвычайного положения.
Все территории Казахстана введен критический крайний уровень террористической опасности. По связью необходимость отключений глава государства объяснил тем боевыми действиями в сети, хорошо скоординированные идеологические версии. Президент заверил, что связь будет возвращаться, исходя из актуальной обстановки. Вопрос постепенного снятия режима чрезвычайного положения. Форман Байдавлетов, Федор Казахстан. Центральноазиатское бюро вестей.
Мы очень отставать от времени. Смотрим 60 минут на платформе. Наведите камеру смартфона или и смотрите 60 минут, когда вам удобно.
Как фильм мне нравится.
Now, this is a very interesting topic. Why do people in the Middle East have lowest rates of cancer if we compare this to the entire world? Let's do a deep dive. Now, the other name for the Middle East is West Asia. What's conflicting about this information is they have low cancer rate, but a very high consumption of sugar rate. The video, sugar feeds cancer. So the question is, cancer despite consuming so much sugar. In fact, the Middle East consume more sugar than any other parts of the world. Now, yes, they have a lot of diabetes and obesity, and the cancer is on the low side. Now, if we take the average of how many people get cancer, it's 198 people, 1,000 people get cancer. Now, if we take a look at individual in the Middle East, we have Saudi Arabia get cancer out of 100,000. Yemen, 97 people out of 100,000. Oman, 4, 7. UAE, it's 107. And Kuwait is 116 people out of 100,000 people get cancer. So you can this risk of getting cancer. Let's compare this with Australia. 468 people out of 100,000 cancer. They take number 1, they get cancer. Number 2, Ireland is 304 people out of 100,000 people. Next one is Hungary, 368 people. And then United States, 352 people out of develop cancer. So what is so unique about the Middle East? Well, number 1, fasting, Ramadan. Now, just fast that extends over. Now, that 1 month is just 1 month year. What blows right after sunrise to sunset. So they're usually eating before that, after that. It is considered a type of intermittent fasting only for and produces a tremendous
Еще учитывая, что сердце удобно вообще.
That's quite
это вообще не еда. Ну, это уже просто я так радикально, что ли? Ну, радикально. Ну, а как иначе? Непригодно человеческим созданием гуманоидов. Да, нет. Ну, как бы нет. Есть-то можно все. И я так думаю, что существа могут как-то эволюционировать потихоньку, да, но это не суть разговора. То есть, но не факт, что это нормально. То есть для работы и для жизни тоже, и для других, и для общества. Наоборот, нет. Это что, тебе так говорит? Нет. Просто мысли вслух. А что, не так, что ли? Представляешь, да, гневно делать? Надо быть осознанным, как бы. Просто да. Меня поднимаешь уже, да. Я говорю, там, ну да. Я даже так думаю, ну нет, это да, ну, он себе так как делать лучше свои, да, ну, вообще просто как, в целом вообще. Я ничего не говорю. Да. В том-то и дело, начинает, как будто у тебя вот голова работает, а у них нет. То есть, ну, нет, чему-то и подумать самому, это да. Да, и все равно приходится. Я только не могу про... Да, ну ладно, не касается. Вот этого не буду. Да. Хорошо. Ладно, значит, не надо. Да. Все дела, потому что нужны. Да. Что конкретно делать? Это точка. Потом еще дальше пункт. Это, наверное, как на ощупь, да, типа. Ну вот, да, как он... Да.
Help with preventing cancer? Well, it starts cancer. You really can 50 times more insulin receptors in your cell versus a normal being. That means that cancer cells have a very avid, greedy hunt for glucose because they have more receptors to eat glucose. So this is how they diagnose cancer through a PET scan. A PET scan identifies areas in the body that have a very high metabolism of sugar. So cancer, you're not consuming sugar. All right, number two, autophagy, which is a condition to recycle old damaged proteins. It helps to recycle things like damaged mitochondria. And if we look at what cancer really is, damage your mitochondria. The mitochondria is damaged. The mitochondria adapts its metabolic system to a different way of dealing with energy. It's glucose. You kick in this autophagy, damaged mitochondria, which is going to cancer. The third thing about fasting is that when you fast new immune cells, you strengthen your immune system. Stronger. You generate more killer T cells, which directly kill cancer cells. And you also stimulate more helper T cells, which reduce cancer. All right, next point about fasting. It's one of the best things to get rid of inflammation. Cancer tends to spread, migraine because of inflammation. So fasting is one of the most potent anti-inflammatories for cancer being spread. Also, when you fast, you increase antioxidant networks of the body. So actually protect you against free radical damage, like in the are improved or enhanced when you fast. So that's going to the risk of getting cancer right off the bat. Fasting is therapies. Hippocrates mentioned fasting quite extensively. And he had an issue, but to eat when sick is to feed the illness. Okay, so when you're ill, you don't want to eat the foundational father of medicine. Okay, number one. Number two would be the spices that people eat in the Middle East. Turmeric, loaded with properties. It's one of the best. Saffron, certain phytonutrient that's very good at cancer. Cardamom, anti-cancer properties. Nutmeg, caraway, cinnamon, and coriander all have anti-cancer properties. Plus, on top of that, certain foods that have additional anti-cancer properties: black seed, olive oil, dill, and dates. Now, I'm doing dates if you're trying to lose weight or you're doing a ketogenic diet, but are certain phytonutrients in dates that have anti-cancer properties. All right, number 3, low tobacco usage for women in the Middle East. Okay, not men. Okay, that's probably increased, but women. And if you actually lose weight of women using tobacco is so low, it makes the whole average come way down. I mean, take a look at this. 20% of the population. Okay, that's 1 out of 5 people. Yet, if we look at women in the Middle East, in Iraq, it's 3%. Okay, not 20%. Okay, compared to 20% worldwide. Then we have Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, 2%. The UAE, 0.8% of the entire female population. UAE smokes. That's a very, very insignificant compared to. Then we get points compared to 20%. Significant amount of women in that area of the world. Now, for that to women in Chile, it's 40%, more than 2 times the world average. And then Serbia is 10%. So, smoking is definitely linked to cancer. Cancer if you smoke or chew 2 times the risk compared to people that do not smoke or chew tobacco. 25% of all cancers out there are caused by either smoking or chewing tobacco. And the other thing you need to know in chemicals in tobacco, okay, in cigarettes, okay, and 70 of them have a direct link to cancer. And just as a side note, vaping also is the colon of the lung because of the nicotine and other chemicals. Alcohol is prohibited in most of the Middle East. Risk of 6 different of cancer. If you drink alcohol, you're cancer of the liver and also an oral pharyngeal area, which is the area in the back of the throat, and also includes the back of the tongue and the upper roof of the mouth. And it just so happens people have the lowest rate of getting cancer in this area. The areas of the world that have the highest rate of getting this cancer are Western Europe, Northern Europe, and North America. All right, now the question is that they're not smoking as much and they're not drinking alcohol as much. These numbers even lower. Okay? It's probably because they get the world, as well as more high fructose corn syrup and cancer loves sugar. So the obesity situation, over 30% of the population is obese, and there's these also is obese. More high fructose corn syrup, even if you're not drinking alcohol, fasting alcohol as much. Numbers even lower. Okay, well, because they consume more sugar than any area of the world, as high fructose corn syrup and cancer loves sugar. Also be linked to in any other area. It's probably because they can in any other area of the world, as well as more high fructose corn syrup and cancer loves sugar. It could also be linked to the obesity situation. 30% of the population is obese, and there's more risk of getting cancer if you're very, very low vitamin D levels. In fact, 80 is low in vitamin D. And vitamin D is protecting someone against cancer and reducing the risk. Important. Low in vitamin D levels. In fact, low D. And vitamin D is very important in protecting someone against cancer and reducing the risk. And it just so happens when you consider, you're going to also deplete. And vitamin D is essential in keeping the system very, very strong. And then one last thing, polymorphism. What is polymorphism? Where the genetics or the gene in a way that there's kind of like a defect in the genes ratio of people with this genetic defect, vitamin D receptor, okay, for vitamin D. So if your receptor is defective and you can't absorb vitamin D as well, okay, for some reason, then you're going to be the vitamin D, in which case, if you do live in the Middle East, what you should be doing is D on a regular basis. All right, now why the Middle East has low rates of getting cancer? The next question is, how can you potentially lower this even further? And I created a video. Check this out right here.
Всего лишь при простых зубочистках вы...
So hands your absolute best strategy for cancer. Now the diet for should be different than the diet you would be on if you, and I will discuss this in this video. Now before I begin, I want to know that nothing in this video is intended to care. In fact, I'm not going to make any claims that any of this information is going to cure your cancer. So I'm going to talk about all the mechanisms of how fasting can greatly help you. And I want to show you something that could greatly benefit a person if for some reason not an option. Let's say, for example, too thin, they're too frail, and they need some other, what I would recommend, a little. Fasting is one of the oldest therapies known to man. Hippocrates has talked about the massive benefit of fasting long ago. Historically, nearly every practices fasting. So listen, it's very, very important to understand differences between normal cells and cells. Cancer cells originate from normal cells. Thing in your cell becomes, and that thing is called the mitochondria. Mitochondria is the factory of the cell. It produces all the energy for your body. So after the mitochondria become damaged, the organism starts to switch over its metabolism to a different way of burning fuel. It starts to ferment sugar, and when it starts to become extremely hungry. It also eats other things, which we're going to talk about, but sugar provides. In the process of a normal cell becoming a cancer cell, it loses its mortality, mortal. So your normal cells actually have a limit. They only live so long, but the cancer cells the normal cells, and they basically take over the body. So the first mechanism of fasting is that fasting helps you starve off the fuel. Starves off your glucose, because guess you're not eating anything. So no eating, no glucose, and so you help to prevent feeding the cancer. It was discovered by Professor Otto, who won the Nobel Prize. Now, in extreme conditions, normal cells can temporarily sugar, as in a severe infection, like or pathogen invasion in your body, or an intense exercise or trauma. Your body can switch to ferment. Mechanism is a survival mechanism for fuel. All right, that's mechanism 2. Certain cancers can also live called as another amino acid. Acid called arginine. Now the problem is glutamine, which makes up certain proteins, a lot of different foods. So when you fast, you're not glutamine, so you're going to deprive the cell of this other fuel. There are certain therapies right now that are using medications to block. One is called Dawn, which is a glutamine inhibitor. There are also natural inhibitors as well. And green tea to block glutamine, creating an anti-cancer effect. Also, other phytonutrients anti-cancer. Now, I want to clarify this glutamine amino acid. Avoiding glutamine is not going to prevent you from getting cancer. You want to avoid glutamine. You would only want to avoid glutamine cancer. So I just wanted to make that clarification. So the problem is you can't fast forever. So what type of diet is going to limit the amount of glutamine, arginine, because they're in a lot of different foods. One thing you want to do is a high protein diet. It's better to do a low protein diet if you have and a protein diet if you're just trying to prevent cancer. But whey protein has a very large amount of arginine. So I would avoid any type of protein powders, especially whey protein. And nuts are also high in arginine, except for the pistachio. Maybe eat more pistachios on that protocol. All right, protein component. Now, the third now in relationship to fasting is this concept of autophagy. Autophagy is not. And autophagy means self-eating. It sounds like it's something to it's a survival mechanism, and your body is eating up damaged, and it's recycling them into new proteins as well as so. Autophagy is a fuel source. It also degrades waste products, and it recycles, and it repairs things, cleans up things, and it has a powerful effect on cancer. It helps to shrink tumors, and it can actually enhance cancer development. Now, there's different types of type. It's called mitochondria. Now, what is mitochondria? That is autophagy for the mitochondria. So your body goes in there and it starts to the mitochondria that are damaged. Remember I talked about the cancer is damaged mitochondria? Fast, you increase mitochondria. Autophagy is a very potent anti-inflammatory mechanism. So you're going to drop inflammation. And the thing about inflammation is that cancer tends to spread inflammation. And this is why people in areas of old injury in areas of inflammation. So it's very, very at a minimum. Now this next point is very, very interesting. Autophagy also cleans up carcinogens. Carcinogens are those that don't cancer. They can trigger cancer. That would be like pesticides, insecticides, herbicides. Now radiation trigger cancer, but autophagy is not. Now there's another piece to this that is very, very important. There's conditions that damage your ability to perform autophagy. So those things are being a diabetic, viral infections, fatty liver, having chronic inflammation. All of these things in a chronic nature will increase the risk of cancer because there's less autophagy. And if you haven't guessed it, the biggest thing that triggers autophagy is fasting. All right, the next point I bring up, number 4, is your immune system. What fasting can do to your system. And this is very, very important to bring up because things that they do for cancer are chemo and radiation therapy. Both of these destroy your immune system. So your immune system is really a factor in preventing cancer as well as directly treating cancer. Your immune system has several mechanisms, both directly and indirectly. So the killer T cells can direct cancer cells. The cells can indirectly certain white blood cells to kill cancer. And the real amazing thing about fasting is that it triggers your immune system stem cells in your bone to and even regrow an immune system that is damaged. And when people do radiation and chemo, adding fasting to that protocol can decrease the side effects from radiation and chemotherapy, as well as enhance the effectiveness of chemo and therapy. Now, the reason why the medical profession does not recommend fasting in place of therapies that have side effects, license, or go to jail, because the way that the laws are written, if you're a medical doctor, you have to practice medicine, and there's certain protocols that you have to follow. So you will never see fasting as a initial therapy. It will always be adjunct to. I'm going to touch on the 5th mechanism. There are 3 hormones to briefly talk about. One is called IGF-1, and that's produced on the liver. That is a very anabolic. It makes things get. Also can stimulate the growth of. Mention this. If someone doesn't have cancer, it's not only when you get cancer that the IGF-1 can cause cancer to spread. So, IGF-1, insulin. Okay, Insulin is also an anabolic hormone to increase the risk of getting cancer. And in the presence of insulin, fasting go way down to 0. So a lot of the benefits from fasting and autophagy occur when the first lowering insulin. So keeping insulin low is a very, very key thing. And then we have estrogen. Estrogen in excess can trigger breast uterus, cancer of the ovary, chemotherapies that block action. So anything that can increase estrogen is something you want to limit, trying to treat cancer and prevent cancer. You want to limit dairy if you have soy products. Soy is very estrogenic, especially birth control pills are estrogen. Replacement therapy has estrogen in it. So of course, if you have cancer and you're taking birth control pills and hormone replacement therapy, probably not, is a wonderful natural remedy to balance your estrogens. It's really good for things like estrogen production. So anything that can increase estrogen is something you want to treat cancer and prevent cancer, like milk. You want to limit dairy if you have cancer. Soy products. Soy is very estrogenic, especially the soy pills are estrogen. Hormone replacement therapy has estrogen in it. That can increase estrogen is something you want to limit dairy if you have cancer. Soy products, especially the soy protein isolates. Birth control pills are estrogen, has estrogen in it. So of course, if you have cancer, you're taking birth control pills and hormone, best idea. Now, iodine from wonderful natural remedy to help your estrogens. It's really to breast or ovarian cysts. And then you have DIM, which is a cruciferous product that helps to reduce estrogen in your body. Sea kelp is a probably not the best idea. And hormone therapy, probably not the best idea. Now, iodine from sea, wonderful natural remedy to help balance estrogens. It's really things like fibrocystic breast or cysts. And then you have DIM, which is a concentrated cruciferous product that helps to reduce estrogen in your body. And because it comes from cruciferous, it's anti-cancer. One mechanism being just one. Your estrogens for things like fibrocystic breast or ovarian cysts. And then you have DIM, which is a concentrated cruciferous product that helps reduce estrogen in your body. And because it comes from cruciferous, it's anti-cancer. One mechanism being just lowering the amount of estrogen. All right, mechanism number 6, and I've already talked about this a little bit, inflammation. The more you can cut down on cancer, one mechanism being just lowering the amount of estrogen. Cruciferous is anti-cancer. reduce estrogen in your body. And because it comes from cruciferous, it's anti-cancer. One mechanism being just lowering the amount of estrogen. All right, mechanism number 6, and I've already talked about this a little bit, inflammation. The more you can cut down inflammation, the less risk you have for cancer. Cancer follows inflammation. A lot of people develop cancer in areas of old injury, areas of inflammation. I remember when I was in practice, one lady had cancer in a certain part of her breast. And I asked her, have you ever injured that part of your breast? And when she thought about it, she remembered having some trauma in that exact location. Another patient came in with cancer of the brain. Okay? I asked him if he ever injured the brainstem. He said no, but I did fall off of a roof once and I landed on my head. I said, that would be injury to your brainstem. But out of all the things that can rid inflammation, fasting is at the top of the list. And fasting also can boost the antioxidant networks that you have in your body, thereby minimizing the free radical damage and lessening the damage to the mitochondria. All right, now we want to talk about the 7th mechanism here in relationship to fasting, which brings up this other topic, and that is ketones. You now know that cancer can live on glucose and 2 amino acids, glutamine and arginine. Ketones can provide cancer with the cellular membrane structure that the cancer cell needs. So in other words, just because someone's on a ketogenic diet and they're low in sugar does not bulletproof them from getting cancer. Ketones that come from fat, raw material for the membranes around cancer cells. So I needs soda ketones. You now know that cancer, glucose, and 2 amino acids, glutamine and arginine. Ketone can provide cancer with the cellular membrane structure that the cancer cell needs. So in other words, just because someone's on a ketogenic diet and they're low in sugar does not prevent them from getting cancer. So ketones that come from fat for membranes around cancer cells. So I didn't know this initially. This is some new. Tried to suppress for quite some time, but up. So I finally dug into some of this research to cut the fact that ketones certainly can give the cancer some of the structural parts that it needs, even though ketones themselves have an anti-tumor effect. Okay, so but I'm going to give you a solution. If we can't eat carbs, and we're not supposed to, now we can't eat fat. What the heck can we eat? We can't fast forever. Now, I've mentioned some research or supporting some research in Europe related to a non-toxic way to block ketones. And even some of you have supported this research. Which you probably have gotten an email on the updates. But this is very exciting research, and so far, so good. And even though this research is being done in mice, you always start with mice before you do human studies. So this is based on some very interesting data about cancer cells versus normal cells. So with cancer cells, there's really only one door for ketones. It's membranes. Okay, there's just one door, one chemical pathway. With that pathway, you could potentially starve off the cancer from getting any raw material for its membranes. But the question that came up from that is, what about, do they just have one door? No, they don't. The membranes from normal cells can come from fatty acids, not just ketones. So the goal fatty acids, not just so the goal is to block this door, this chemical pathway that is allowing these ketones to make membranes for the cancer cells.
Ну и что подтверждается, наоборот, и что подтверждается, что у него очень надо есть. Сладенько. Ну, насколько сладенько это, можно ложиться. Ну, наверное, нет, нет. Ну, может быть. Понимаешь, это нелепо, да, то есть машина сама не да. Ну, поймешь,
And this door is called Scott, which stands for a very long chemical name.
Я говорю, мама, говорит, ты добрый человек, говорит, добрый человек.
And it just happens to be Scott inhibitor.
Добрый человек у меня.
Okay, both in the medication area as well as using now.
Ну, меня не касается. Да, наверное, да, ну, это мое субъективное, я драматизирую немножко.
Natural things that have less side effects. That's the area that we are evaluating right now, doing studies in Europe on mice, and so far with great success. So the following Scott inhibitors are the ones that are showing the
Это
most
просто такая, такой гипотетический чисто такой, ну, наоборот,
promise. Number one, we have alpha lipoic acid. Number two, garcinia. Then we have red algae, and then black seed oil, and then garlic. Okay, garlic handles a slightly different, it's called a salvage pathway, which I'm not going to get into now, but garlic is very, very important. These are all Scott inhibitors that work synergistically to help starve the cancer of its raw material, to help. These are all Scott inhibitors that work synergistically to help starve the cancer of its raw material for its cellular membranes. Now, if you want more details on the strategy, there's some additional studies which are quite fascinating, and I put those in the.
У меня нету ни работы стабильной, ни нет, то есть как бы, зачем вообще говорить? Ну, ничего, да,
description below. Now, before I get into the dosages, I just want to let you know, I'm not making any claims this is going to cure or prevent any cancer. This is a protocol that I would take if I had cancer, okay? All right, alpha lipoic acid. I would start out at 0.4 grams and gradually, over the course of 3 weeks, increase that amount to 1.8 grams per day. Now, as far as garcinia, I would start at 1.2 grams and gradually increase to 3 grams over a course of 3 weeks. Red algae, I would take 8 grams per day. Black seed oil, I would take 500 milligrams twice a day. And then garlic, I would take 500 milligrams 4 times a day. But that would only be if I'm not consuming actual garlic in my meals or in other forms. So this protocol is designed to shut that door so this pathway called SCOT cannot be an option for the cancer to get its raw material for its membranes. Now, another question that you might be thinking about, the ketogenic diet increases ketones, but fasting also increases ketones even more than the ketogenic diet. So how could fasting help someone with cancer if it's feeding the cancer cell? How could fasting also ketones even more than the ketogenic diet. So how could fasting help someone with cancer if it's feeding the cancer cell ketones? The answer is this: when you do fasting, you also create at the same time an epigenetic effect way higher than the effect of just taking ketones. So there's a lot of other things that are going on when you're doing fasting that apparently override this mechanism of ketones feeding the cancer membrane through. All right, let's talk about the fasting protocol. There's two different protocols. One is for prevention. And I'm going to tell you right now, the best thing you can do right now is to do whatever in cancer, because once you get cancer, you have the medical profession who is giving you all this information and putting the fear of God in you that you better do this and you better not do this, and it's a massive confusion. Not to mention friends and family giving you their 2 cents. Not to mention the fear of having cancer and unsure what to do. So at a very minimum, you want to be doing 16 hours of fasting and have an 8-hour eating window. And when you eat, you want to do low carb. So the ketogenic diet and intermittent fasting is the best way to prevent cancer, because that's going to prevent the damage in the mitochondria. All right, so what do you do if you have cancer? Well, you want to do regular fasting, but you want to step it up to at least 18 hours fasting with a 6-hour eating window. And if you could, I would do more than that. I would do like a 20-hour fasting with a 4-hour eating window, or even do OMAD, where you're eating one day.
Я тоже так думаю. То есть она всегда, понимаешь. Да, да, да. Ты просто ну, вот это есть. Наверное. Ну, да, да. Как бы, вчерашний такой, ну, это уже не будет. А, ну да. Ну, да. Отлично, отлично. Главное живет.
Now, in addition to that, I would do weekly fasting for 2 days. It's 4 to 8 hours. Very, very important. Every week. If you can't do 2 days of fasting, then do 2 days of 500 calories. Now, to me, that's going to be a lot more difficult because you haven't really adapted to that and you're just lowering calories. All right, so what do you do if you have cancer? Well, you want to do regular fasting, but you want to step it up to at least 18 hours fasting with a 6-hour eating window. And if you could, I would do more than that. I would do like a 20-hour fasting with a 4-hour eating window, or even do OMAD, where you're eating 1 meal a day. Now, in addition to that, I would do weekly fasting for 2 days. It's 4 to 8 hours. Very, very important. Every week. If you can't do 2 days of fasting, then do 2 days of 500 calories. Now, to me, that's going to be a lot more difficult because you haven't really adapted to that and you're just lowering calories. And if you eat just a little bit, you're going to be more hungry. But it has been shown that a calorie-restricted diet can actually be very beneficial to help someone with cancer. All right, then once a month, I would recommend fasting for at least 4 days, but I would recommend going up to 7 days if possible. That's once. And then when you eat, the main dish should be cruciferous vegetables, okay, and a lot of them. And so maybe your meal would have a base of broccoli, or maybe it would be kale, or cabbage, or cauliflower. And there's a lot of different great recipes that you can make with this base of cruciferous. Now, why would you recommend cruciferous? Number one, it's low in protein. Number two, it's low in fat. It's low in carbs. It has huge anti-cancer properties. It also is anti-angiogenic. What's that? That is a property that helps to start off the cancer of its blood vessels, okay? It's a thing I haven't talked about, but it can help with that. Because if the cancer cells can't get a blood supply, they die. And cruciferous also help increase phase 1, phase 2 detoxification of your liver, helping to minimize carcinogens. So I would recommend about 10 cups, okay, per day. Now, if you're doing OMAD, 1 meal a day, that would just be 10 cups in that one meal. Now, as a side dish, you'd want to have low protein, okay, not high protein. So maybe it's like 3 ounces of protein. The type of protein I would recommend would be protein high in omega-3, fatty fish, sardines, even cod liver, things like that. Omega-3 fatty acids are very, very, very beneficial when someone has cancer. Now, as far as fat goes, olive oil would be probably one of the best fats that you can consume. It has wonderful anti-cancer properties. And cod liver oil, being omega-3, fat detoxification of your liver, helping to minimize carcinogens. So that is a property. Number 2, it's low in fat, it's low in carbs, it has huge anti-cancer properties. It also is anti-angiogenic. What's that? That is a property that helps to start off the cancer of its blood vessels. Okay? So, thing I haven't.
Может, чего я вот немножко нервничаю. Чего такое?
Talked about, but it can help with that. Because if the cancer cells can't get a blood supply, they die. And cruciferous also help increase phase 1, phase 2 detoxification of your liver, helping to minimize carcinogens. So I would recommend about 10 cups, okay, per day. Now, if you're doing OMAD, 1 meal a day, that would just be 10 cups in that one meal. Now, as a side dish, you'd want to have low protein, okay, not high protein. So maybe it's like 3 ounces, because if the cancer cells can't get a blood supply, they die. And cruciferous also help increase phase 1, phase 2 detoxification of your liver, helping to minimize carcinogens. So I would. Recommend about 10 cups, okay, per day. Now, if you're doing OMAD, 1 meal a day, that would just be 10 cups in that one meal. Now, as a side dish, you'd want to have low protein, okay, not high protein. So maybe it's like 3 ounces. I would do weekly fasting for 2 days. That's 4 to 8 hours. Very, very important. Every week. If you can't do 2 days of fasting, then do 2 days of 500 calories. Now, to me, that's going to be a lot more difficult because you haven't really adapted to that and you're just lowering calories. And if you eat just a little bit, you're going to be more hungry. But it has been shown that a calorie-restricted diet can actually be very beneficial to help someone with cancer. All right, then a month, I would recommend fasting for at least 4 days, but I would recommend going up to 7 days if possible. That's once a month. And then when you eat, the main dish should be cruciferous vegetables, okay, and a lot of them. And so maybe your meal would have a baked broccoli, or maybe it would be kale, or cabbage, a base of broccoli, or maybe it would be kale, or cauliflower.
Ну, наверное, да. Ну, я и А, чуть-чуть там, наверное. Смотри, вот это он не говорил. Ну смотри, просто вот по логике, что проще всего добыть? Что является для человека проще всего добыть? Да. То есть у тебя ни зубов, ни пилы нет никакой, у тебя мускулатуры нет нормально, чтобы отламывать даже, что-то выкапывать там. То есть взял кутяшкой апельсинку, там, вкусно пахнет, вообще же. Не понимаешь, что ли? Нет? Что там, не знаю, ну, фрукт какой-то, яблоко там, апельсинку, не знаю, что у вас там, груши, что там. Да. Орехи их надо добывать, как бы, да, и какие еще надо деградации, то есть, нет, ну, разница хочешь сказать. Ну, что самое, да, на одних фруктах можно прожить, понимаешь, если ты живешь под солнцем, то тебе, да, манги, 3 штуки манги сажал, наверное, лучше, чем как это, наверное, я не знаю, я к примеру тебе говорю. Да, то есть, ну да, другие, да, полно же всяких там, я не знаю, не разбираюсь. Да. Ну, нет, короче, только не так. Они все вкусные, если вообще они не сидят. Надо понимать, вот это не. Ну, это, по идее, как бы природная пища человека. То есть это натуральная пища для наших тел людских. Фрукты. Не овощи причем, а фрукты. Что такое овощ? Овощ – это листья. Листья – это корова, лошадь – корова. И человек с тройной челюстью, с двойными желудками, с четверными пищеварительными трактами, это человеческая еда. И аппетит, она, как правило, ну, это понятно, что искусственно можно, ну, понятно. Но аппетит от того, что ты нюхаешь капусту или листья, что-то нет. А вот когда ты это самое, вот это реально, понимаешь, когда запахло только яблочком свежим, настоящим. Да, понимаю. Сразу слезы, да. Что, не так, что ли? Ну, которая вот, ну да, предвкушение народа. Ну да, ну нет, это не делает. Я просто пытаюсь доказывать, что, что значит доказывать? Ну, давайте порассуждаем, если что тогда для человеческого тела, что съедобно, что нет. Понятно, съесть можно все, что угодно. Мясо сырое можно есть. Что угодно, то есть это, в принципе, все это переварится. Я имею в виду, что нормально, что природно, что будет как бы соответствовать нормальному поведению, нормальному мировоззрению, может, мироощущению даже, нормальной карме, то есть что будет не травматично, ничего не надо будет даже вандализма никакого совершать, понимаешь? То есть залезать, нет, я не говорю, ну он про себя думает, что надо залезть на дерево, можно потрясти. Ну, даже, ну, залез на дерево, сорвал яблоко и что дальше. Даже все деревья не настолько высокие там, да. Ну, о себе так говорит, да, ну, да. Ну, наоборот, да. Вот, наоборот, нет, наоборот. Вот, ну, и вот сейчас представь себе, что если ты будешь, если все будут, то есть никто работать не сможет тогда. Я тебе просто так скажу, что ты не выживешь на это, да, понимаю. Ну, ты, может быть, и сможешь, но только можешь заболеть, да. Просто, ну, нет, не касается, понимаете, да. Потому что, почему ты ешь всякую нехорошую вещь? Одно с другим взаимосвязано, понимаешь? То есть, да, наверное, не знаю, ну, если сразу получить, ну, да, ну, тогда надо догонять умом сразу же, да, понимаете, потому что, не знаю, ну, то есть специально, с умом вместе идет эта специальность, и все, и ногу из жопы достать надо будет тоже, наверное, ее специальностью, например, профессии, или еще что-нибудь, не касается, да, и видим, что-то давай, правильно понимаешь, не те люди, которые, ну, понимают, да, понимают, долго история, конечно, ну, это тоже, кстати, жить захочет, хорошо, а дальше ты что будешь делать? Ладно.
There's a lot of different great recipes that you can make with this base of. Now, why would you recommend cruciferous protein. Number 2,
Наверное. Ну, кто, да, то есть гнев ограничиваешь. Это, в принципе, да, это нормально. Ну, это все читаемо. Да. 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 Ну, вот это у меня тоже такое есть. Но все равно это решается каким-то, не то что даже отдыхом, а самоосознание. Потому что тебя здесь никто не ждет, и за тебя никто ничего не делает. Никто не делает. Эти все отношения, они все как бы, да, ты понимаешь, что женщина в мужском месте, ну, начинаешь понимать, немножко. Ладно, проехали. Ну, ничего хорошего, то есть это не обязательно, это не нужно.
It's low in fat, it's low in carbs, it has huge anti-cancer properties, it also is anti-angiogenic. What's that? That is a property that helps to start off the cancer of its...
Работает. Ну, для себя тоже это, да. Крысик. Короче.
Blood vessels, okay? It's a thing I haven't talked about, but it can help with that. Because if the cancer cells can't get a blood supply, they die. And cruciferous also help increase phase 1, phase 2 detoxification of your liver, minimize carcinogens. So I would recommend about 10 cups, okay, per day. Now, if you're doing OMAD, 1 meal a day, that would just be 10 cups in that 1 meal. Now, as a side dish, you would want to have low, not high protein. So maybe it's like 3. 3 ounces of protein. The type of protein I would recommend would be protein high in omega-3, fatty fish, sardines, even cod liver, things like that. Omega-3 fatty acids are very, very, very beneficial when someone has cancer. Now, as far as fat, sardines, even cod liver, things like that. Omega-3 fatty acids are very beneficial when someone has cancer. Now, as far as fat goes, olive oil would be probably one of the best fats that you can consume. It has wonderful anti-cancer properties. And cod liver oil, being omega-3, apparently, even though it's a fat, won't turn into ketones and won't feed the cancer the raw material for its membranes. Now, if you can add cruciferous sprouts, as in broccoli sprouts, you'll have even a more potent effect on this cancer.
Мне просто интересно,
And of course, you want to avoid cheese, soy, and conventional foods that have pesticides. You want to do mainly organic. Now, of course, I'm just telling you the ideal situation, okay? Not everyone is going to be able to eat this way. Now, the main reason why we are doing this study is to figure out what we can do to not only enhance the benefits of fasting, but also to come up with a method of blocking this chemical pathway, this door called SCOT, which would really be beneficial for those people who just cannot do fasting, whether they're...
Это уже достаточно, что ты уходишь к людям, да, то есть ты делаешь то, что им надо. То, что ты готов уже даже это да. Это просто здесь как бы не о чем говорить. Там просто размножение, и это область женского интима. Это женское там. Очень агрессивное, скажем. Ну, то есть как бы направлено то, что ну, понимаешь, короче. И это хорошо, потому что так я на свете, так все на свете видят. Это хорошо для здоровья. Ну тогда будь кастратом, и тогда все, значит, если ты так думаешь, что люди должны рождаться, значит ты должен растворяться в вакууме. Не знаю, как ты должен воспарить, в пране раствориться, как угодно. Понимаешь, ты, да, в йоге своей ты должен просто, что как в воздух превратиться, понимаешь? Да. Если так не происходит, значит говорить не о чем, точка, и все войны веркают на угоде просто. И смерти желаете для себя. Ну просто, ну, тебе это просто это понятно. Просто это место больное все. Да, то есть как бы все очень хотят размножаться, но не умеют. Или здесь это не касается. Или делать нехрен всем тоже. Причем все люди там тоже, да? Просто искать. Что де-факто тебе понадобится? Что тебя будет самое точно утешать? Что ориентируется? На что ориентируется
They're too thin, or they're too frail, or they just can't do it. We're trying to find out the results of what would happen if someone didn't fast and just did these nutritionals, but this chemical pathway, this door called SCOT, which would really be beneficial for those people who just cannot do fasting, whether they're too thin, or they're too frail, or they just can't do it. We're trying to find out the results of what would happen if someone didn't fast and just did these nutritional protocols. But I think ideally, if you did fasting and these nutritional protocols, would really be a very good strategy. The last thing I want to mention is, unfortunately, the success rate, the effectiveness of chemo and radiation are very, very, very minimal. But I want to emphasize that prevention of cancer is the most important thing you can do right now. If you're new to my channel, and you want to learn how to do healthy keto and intermittent fasting, I have a very short playlist right here. Check it out.
Bloß keine Softdrinks trinken, davon kriegt man einen dicken Bauch. Da sagt mein Körper aber was anderes. Liegt es daran, dass du jeden Tag stundenlang Sport machst, Jasper? Nein, daran liegt es auch nicht. Ich habe Ernährungsberatung studiert und habe einfach gelernt, dass nicht jeder Körper...
Hi guys, listen, I have 2,500 videos, okay?
То есть все равно жизнь она такая, что, да, что ты, ты же мужик, то есть надо просто найти, то есть как бы это просто путь, деваться некуда с этого пути, потому что никто не будет один, то есть как бы тебе на всех плевать, допустим, даже. Но ты тоже не будешь, ты тоже так не можешь жить, ты даже так не хочешь, ты хочешь быть и мастером спорта и понять, что это за ну и так далее. Может, и еда ради еды, ты же не человек, ты же человек, да. Она может помочь тебе и взаимообразно, или может мешать чему-то. Ну что, будем делать за деньги? И головой правильно все это как бы оголенные, типа, да. То есть рисково, как мужик настоящий, выбирать слова, да. Музыку, да, целого оголенного. Зачем ты сейчас спросишь? Зачем ты? Всегда вся понарошка, как бы. Налегке.
On YouTube. 2,500. So sometimes when you go to a channel, it's hard to find where to start because it's all random. So I wanted to create a beginner's video, the basics. So if you're new to my channel, if you have friends and family members that are new to my program, this is the first video to watch. Okay, so let me just kind of break it down. I'll make it really, really fast. Keto, or ketosis. What does keto mean? When you burn fat, your fat breaks down into these things called ketones. Your body can then use those as fuel. Okay, so your body can actually run on ketones. It's a much, much better fuel source than sugar fuel that most people run on. It's cleaner fuel. It creates a lot of other benefits, which I get into in other videos. Okay, so keto basically means you're burning fat. Okay, healthy keto is a version of regular ketosis, but with a twist. A principle that I use is you don't lose weight and get healthy. You have to get healthy first to then lose weight. So getting healthy basically means, in relationship to eating, providing all of your nutrients. Okay, so you're eating foods that are high quality that provide all the nutrients. So you get the requirements that our bodies need. So what I recommend is something called healthy ketosis. All right? So that's the version. The other action that I recommend is something called IF. What is that? That's intermittent fasting. What is that? That is it's not a diet, it's a pattern of eating and not eating. So instead of doing 3 meals or 6 meals a day or snacks in between the meals, you're eating less frequently. Why? Because every time you eat, you raise a hormone, insulin. Too much insulin is very dangerous in the body. So what we're trying to do with healthy ketosis and intermittent fasting is reduce the excess of insulin. We're not trying to make it down to zero. We're just trying to get rid of the excess. The vast majority of the population has excess insulin, but they've never been tested. The doctors usually don't test it. They're focusing on your blood sugars or blood glucose, but not fasting insulin, okay? I have videos on that, but just, you can watch another video, but the point is that we're trying to lower insulin. So to do that, you need to eat less frequently. Let's say you start with 3 meals per day with no snacks, and then you go to 2 meals a day, no snacks, and that would be considered intermittent fasting. And some people do 1 meal a day, but the point is that it's just eating less frequent. It's not necessarily focused on lowering calories. Even though you will be consuming less calories, the focus is not on calories. It's about eating less frequently. At the end of the day, we want to provide all the nutrients, so we need a certain amount of calories. The cool thing about intermittent fasting is that because you're eating less frequent, the requirements for nutrients go down because the body starts being conservative with its nutrients. It starts holding or retaining more nutrients. So what you would need for 3 meals a day, okay, as far as nutrients, you would need less nutrients for 2 meals a day, just because the body adapts. Sometimes people are concerned about losing muscle mass. Well, the other cool thing is that when you're doing intermittent fasting, certain hormones, like growth hormone, increases dramatically to protect the muscles from being lost. Okay, so your body tends to now conserve protein as well when you do intermittent fasting, so you're not going to lose muscle mass. So the 2 main things that help you lower insulin are the reduction of carbohydrates, and I'm talking about the sugar, refined carbs, the grains, the pasta, the cereal, the biscuits, the waffles, the juice, the alcohol. I have a lot of videos on this right here, like a ton, but that just kind of gives you the summary. And also, number 2, eating less frequently. What we're doing when we actually drop carbs and we eat less frequently is we're adapting to fat burning. We're actually making new cellular machinery to run your body on fat fuel, okay, and no longer on sugar. Now, what happens when you consume too many carbs, the insulin comes in and takes it out and converts it to fat. So a lot of the fat on your body right now has came from the carbohydrates, not necessarily the fat that you ate, but the carbohydrates that you ate. The other thing that people don't realize is this: in the presence of too much insulin, you can't lose this fat. So if you have a stubborn metabolism and you can't lose weight, we know you have too much insulin. Is there a quick test to know if you have too much insulin? Yes. Just look down right now, and if you can see your belly, you have too much insulin. Because these are the main symptoms of high insulin: belly fat, high blood pressure, high cholesterol, fatigue, especially after eating, decreased cognitive function, lack of focus, poor memory, moody, irritable, sometimes depressed, grouchy because of the blood sugar issue, cravings for carbs for sure, and you're hungry all the time, especially between meals. When you get your body into fat burning, and now your body is burning fat between meals, because before it wasn't, it was dependent on your diet and dietary sugar. So now when you're burning your own fat, wow, you get rid of hunger. Okay? You're not hungry anymore. It makes it easy to do this. You don't crave it anymore. That's why healthy keto and intermittent fasting is very successful long term, because it allows you to stick to it, because you're not hungry all the time, you're not craving.
Неадекватно, ты не понимаешь, что ты никому не Ладно, я как-нибудь себя... Бывает с собой надо.
Sometimes get rid of the hunger. And now when you're burning your own fat, wow, you get rid of the hunger. Okay, you're not hungry anymore. It makes it easy to do this. You don't crave it anymore. That's why healthy keto and intermittent fasting is very successful long term, because it allows you to stick to it, because you're not hungry all the time, you're not craving. Sometimes when you look up keto, you'll see this little pie chart thing right here. It'll say 20% protein, maybe 70% or 65% fat as far as the total calories, 5% carbs. Okay, this is very confusing for people because you have to calculate calories into grams and this and that. This is the simplicity right here. If you just envision your plate, okay, this is your plate. Half of the plate should be salad or vegetables, okay? A quarter of the plate should be protein. And the other quarter should be fat. So this 65 or 70, and the other quarter should be fat. So this 65 or 70% fat, which seems like a lot of fat, now remember 1 gram of fat is more than twice the calories of carbs and protein. So this is misleading. In reality, the volume of fat is really only, a quarter of your plate. And a lot of this fat is actually mixed with the protein. So it's not as much as you think. And then you have this small amount of carbs down here. Just to keep it really, really simple. Okay? And healthy keto and intermittent fasting is not just about weight loss. It's about getting you super healthy, for reducing inflammation, for helping your cognitive function, helping your overall mood, making the body work better. Okay? So now that you have the basics, now you can go to the rest of the videos. Thanks for watching. Hey, if you're liking this content, please subscribe now, and I will actually keep you updated on future videos.
Бургер с бататом, самое важное, собственный фарш. Формируем котлету и на сковороду. Булочки, чеддер, теперь сборка. Скрепляем, батат уже готов, и наш фирменный соус. Не дайте ковиду лишить вас любимых вкусов. Выбор за вами. Вакцинируйтесь.
Есть такие места, куда ходить не надо. Там что, убивают, что ли? А если так? Больше туда не лазить. Место там QIWI.
Alright guys, you just watched the basic plan, the overview. This is video 2. We're going to dig into some more of the details. This is mainly for people that are new to my channel. Again, I have 2,500 videos, and if you get lost in all the
видишь, как бы
details,
все равно рано или поздно все такие вот возвращаются к храму, ходят, ну, просто прибило тебя, да, здоровье, все. Почему так? Не знаю, все хорошо. Нет, я тоже не исключение, но я не про это сейчас. Я говорю, что теория такова, смотри, ты все равно, вот что для тебя самое важное в жизни, как бы типа святое, ну, скажем, я не имею в виду какие-то пафосные штуки, ну, вот что важно, что тебя, ну, ладно, давай не святое, просто, что для тебя вот самое важное в жизни, вот что тебя ведет, там, не знаю, любовь к религии, говорит, ну, даже так, книжники какие-нибудь, любовь к знанию, там, не знаю, да не важно это все, да. даже к своей семье, там, что-нибудь типа того. Что, ну, ты считаешь самым нужным, и ты пока с этим даже не разбираешься, как оно дальше, так, ты просто живешь пока какое-то время. Да, и раз, короче, и в какой-то момент, там, да, то есть, даже не обязательно, что заболел, он, да, понял, да. Он тебя, да. Ну, это я не это имел в виду, я имею в виду, что все надо разбираться, да, то есть, даже если ты такой, да, в какой-то момент ты точно будешь понимать, что тебе это мешает, как бы, понимаешь, да, но тебе будет проще уже, ну, да. Одно с другим как бы так именно коррелирует, Вы же хорошо жили, что вы изменили? Что же это? Я слушаю. Почему? Ну, то есть я говорю, да. Но это не суть этого, мне было все. Вот теория такова, что ты все равно придешь, тебе все равно придется наладить еще отношения, но на себе. Ты все равно придешь к тому, что тебе, да, надо, да, ну, это имел в виду. Разбираться со всем, ну да, так или иначе. Потому что это тебе будет мешать упираться тебе. Я даже не про здоровье говорю, а то, что ты для тебя, например, работа важна, и ты понимаешь, что ты будешь, например, да, не хватает чего-нибудь. Да, и ты очень нервничаешь, например, потому что много чего-нибудь. Да. Ну уж если примитивно, да. Или тебе время, у тебя много времени занимает какие-то ненужные процедуры. Да. И так далее. Да не важно даже как, все равно он понял, он себе так говорит просто. Да. Он на дороге начал. Ну и еще, как работает? Что для тебя нормально в жизни? У нормального мужика, ну, то есть у всех мужских особей, у них только одно есть. И это дело, которым ты занимаешься, ну, в обществе, в людях. То есть только оно сложное, и только оно может быть. Ну, да, ну, понимаешь, статуя, ну, наоборот, да. Ой, это не надо. А, это что ли? Нет, смотри, ладно, если это для тебя важно, то как бы, а ты кто такой? Понимаешь, то есть на это деньги нужны, и положение, да, тоже. Значит, не настолько важно, да. Когда у тебя гарем будет, ты будешь содержать всех, да. Ну, или там не содержать, а просто будет, ну, я не имею в виду, что я имею в виду официально. Да, то есть, ну, значит, это уже не у нас в стране, да. Ну, ты правильно понимаешь, что политики могут, ну, наследственные политики. А, вы, ой, это тоже, да. Черт знает, ребят. Это не надо, потому что это один на один, наверное, вопрос решается. Ну, смотрите сами. Ну, не важно, то есть все как бы возвращается. Ну, то есть, да, ты, ну, он просил, да, твои ненормальные.
The second video that you should watch, and we're called healthy keto with intermittent fasting. Okay, all right, number one, you want to go as long as you can in the morning without eating. You just don't want to eat unless you're hungry. That's the thing that you need to focus on, because so many people eat when they're not hungry, and they're wondering why it's not working, they're not getting results, because the body finally is burning fat, and then you start eating. What will happen is you're going to raise insulin, and then your insulin's going to come high, and then it's going to push your blood sugars low, and you're going to be hungry an hour and a half later. So really, it's what you ate the night before that's going to dictate if you're hungry in the morning. If you do this correctly, like I'm showing you, with just 2 meals a day, you're going to wake up in the morning not hungry. So the goal is to go as long as you can. You may find that you can't go all the way to lunch. You have to eat at like 11 o'clock. Fine. eat your breakfast there. Okay, but what will happen, you want to keep pushing it to the point where your body is fully adapted to fat burning. You're no longer sugar burning. That could take 3 days up to 5 days. Sometimes it takes longer to get into full ketosis. All right? So that's the first rule of thumb. If we can do 2 meals with a 4-hour window, okay, and what that means is that we eat and then we wait 4 hours and we eat again, that's your window. That will give you a 20-hour fasting period. That's incredible. That's enough to see some serious results. The only time that would not work for someone as far as weight loss goes is, let's say they're going through menopause, they have a slow thyroid condition, and they have a history of dieting, and their metabolism is so slow, they're going to have to push these together and have 1 meal a day, and then they will lose weight. And there are even people that still lose just a little bit on this, and they might need to go even longer because their metabolism is so dead. And I've had this happen, not to a lot of people, but certain people that just, from birth, they just had a slow metabolism for one thing or another, and they need to go, probably eat every other day. Okay, that's just what they need to do until the system heals. But for everyone else, we're going to talk about what are you going to eat on this first meal and the second meal. I've surveyed a lot of people, and this is what they eat, and this is what I eat. Eggs. I do 4 eggs a day. You can do 2 to 4 eggs. Pasture-raised organic eggs, they're a little more expensive, but they're worth it. Now, it's really important to eat healthy eggs because the factory farm eggs are just so bad. They're just terrible. And then we have avocado. Avocado has a tremendous amount of potassium and really good fats to help you go longer. Cheese. Now, if you are a guy and you have a prostate condition, don't do the cheese. But if you have a high-quality organic cheese from a grass-fed cow, goat's cheese is even better, not a problem. Okay, so then we have bacon. Some people don't want to do bacon. That's totally fine. I like bacon. I do bacon from the farmer's market. If you're going to go to a health food store, get the nitrate-free organic bacon with sugars less than 1 gram. Okay. Bacon, by the way, in pork has high levels of vitamin B1. And for those people that are saying bacon is unhealthy, yet they're consuming chicken, I would beg
Я просто понял уже, вот я тебе говорю. То есть мой путь, 100 раз повторял уже в огороде, как прожить тебе, как прожить.
Differ because chicken is really disgusting unless you're doing it again from the farmer's market. Okay, nut butters. Can do almond butter, peanut butter. Make sure there's no sugar in it. Maybe a couple of tablespoons. Now, the reason for this is to give you enough fat, especially in the beginning, so you can go longer, okay, without getting hungry. You're eating at 12. You have a hamburger or a piece of meat or a lamb or whatever meat that you want, 3 to 6 ounces. Let's say you're younger and you have a faster metabolism, then you do 8 ounces. Let's say, for example, you're an athlete, you do 8 ounces. Let's say you're a very large person, you need more protein, do 8 ounces. I wouldn't want to go over 8 ounces per meal. Now, we're not talking about the actual protein grams, we're talking about the actual product of meat itself, okay? 3 to 6 ounces or 8 ounces. So you don't have to calculate the grams inside that meat, but it is a big difference. And then we consume our vegetables. You can steam them. You can have some raw or the salad. I do a lot of salad. We need a large amount of salad. So some people break up their salad between this meal here and this meal, and they do maybe 5 cups and 5 cups, or maybe 4 cups and 4 cups. I mean, 4 cups is not that much. It's kind of like a medium-sized salad. I personally do all of my salad at one sitting. I'll do like 10 cups, and sometimes I'll do more than that. So I'm used to it. If you feel worse with consuming those greens, that means that your microbes are not quite in the right place. You might have a condition called SIBO. I'll put a link down below. In which case you want to cut back on your vegetables, because what's going to happen, the fiber in the vegetable is going to retain fluid, and you're going to feel bloated, and your weight loss is not going to come off. It's not because you're not losing weight, it's because you're retaining fluid. Okay, just realize you want to feel good after consuming this, and you may have to eat small amounts and gradually increase it, because guess who's eating the fiber from your vegetables? The microbes. and they might not be plentiful enough to do that. So there's many different reasons. I'll put a video down below just on that one topic. Olive oil, balsamic vinaigrette is a great dressing, maybe a handful of nuts, some seeds, because we want that fat. So this is like one option of a meal. This is another option of a meal, just to give you an example. I put a link down below to my website because I have a lot of different examples of different meals. I have a whole recipe, but this would be an example of a typical meal for someone. Okay, let's say you do fish. I love salmon. Salmon is one of the best proteins because it has omega-3. We want to do quality protein. So you can also do sardines. Believe it or not, there are good fats in sardines. I did a video on that. Or seafood. Okay, this gives you the iodine. So you do your fish or seafood, your salad. This is for your dinner, and a fat bomb. What is a fat bomb? It's like a little cookie with healthy fats in it. You can make recipes for this. A lot of people consume a fat bomb just to get them satisfied so they can go from one meal to the next. As your body adapts to fat burning, you probably won't even need that because you're burning your own fat. But in the beginning, it's really helpful. Here's another option for some food. You can do chicken with the skin, preferably nice and crispy, or chicken wings. Let's say you do, again, 3 to 6 ounces of chicken or chicken wings. Do your protein. It's moderate protein. Asparagus, okay, or any other vegetable that you like, or your salad. And then you do olives as your fat, okay? I do a lot of nuts myself. I do that after the meal to the point where I'm like really satisfied so I can go longer. But the key is not snacking at night. So you want to add enough fat to go from this meal all the way to breakfast. Now, the number one weakness people have, I just realized, was boredom. So you're going to have to keep really busy right here and make sure you're not bored so you don't eat the wrong thing. You can consume your vitamins. It's not a problem any time of the day. Apple cider vinegar, teaspoon, and some lemon is really good to have when you drink water. Coffee in the morning, try to just do one. You can do tea. You can add some bulletproof. That's MCT oil, coconut oil. You can put that, blend that in your drink if you want, especially in the beginning, to allow you to go without having the first meal. Not a problem. But if you find that that slows down your weight loss as you do this over a period of a couple of weeks, then you might want to drop out the extra fat. Urge to snack, that means you need more fat and more greens, more vegetables. Those two things will solve the problem. If you crave bread, you need more B vitamins. I recommend electrolytes, a good powder, and B vitamins and or nutritional yeast. You can get them in tablets. Very important, just to make this transition smooth so you have no problem. A good powder, and I recommend electrolytes, a good powder, and B vitamins and or nutritional yeast. You can get them in tablets. Very important, just to make this transition smooth so you have no problems. Sea salt, don't be afraid to add more sea salt because you're going to need more salt. You're going to dump more fluid on this program, and so you have to replace it. The best time to exercise is when you're fasting, so in the morning. Okay, it's actually going to get better benefits. Realize that it could take longer to adapt, but the way that you know you're in hardcore ketosis is that you crave nothing. You're not even hungry anymore. That's when you know it's really working. Better than any other test. This should give you the next layer of information or knowledge. Better than you're not even. The way that you know you're in hardcore ketosis is that you crave nothing. You're not even hungry anymore. That's when you know it's really working. Better than any other test. This should give you the next layer of information or knowledge you need to know. And I will see you in the third video. Hey, if you're liking this content, please subscribe now, and I will actually keep you updated on future videos.
Тук-тук. Попал в передрягу? Не сдавайся. Качай World of Tanks. Я приготовил особые танки.
Я хочу вам сказать, что я вакцинировался 3 раза и еще буду.
Зачем? Я здоров.
Я человек законопослушный, у меня есть корм.
Now, I have done a lot of videos on the ketogenic diet, but I wanted to include a new video for beginners with all the updates, but I want to make it really, really simple. So let's just start with the basics. What is a ketone? A ketone is not a fat, it's not a carbohydrate, it's not a protein. It's kind of a combination, or it has characteristics of both a fat and a carbohydrate, but it's not either. It comes from fat, but a ketone is an alternative fuel source. And the way that you get ketones is you simply lower your carbohydrates in your diet, or you reduce the frequency of eating. And this is why we recommend a low-carb diet with intermittent fasting. And that way you can maximize your ability to make ketones. Ketones have many advantages versus regular. Reduce the frequency of eating. Lower your carbohydrates in your diet, or you reduce the frequency. Simply lower your carbohydrates in your diet, or you reduce the frequency of eating. And this is why we recommend a low-carb diet with intermittent fasting. And that way you can maximize your ability to make ketones. Ketones have many advantages versus regular glucose fuel. Number one, it will increase your oxygen in your body. Number two, it increases your energy. Number three, it supports the brain. In fact, your brain prefers ketones over glucose. Same thing with the heart. If your heart is damaged or your brain is damaged, ketones are the answer, and they can bypass mechanical damage pathways and feed the tissues directly. Most of the body tissues can run in ketones, but some parts need glucose. And this is the confusion that people have. They think they need to consume glucose to get glucose. No, there's something called gluconeogenesis. Okay? Glucose, new, genesis, the creation of. Your body can make glucose if it needs it from fat, ketones, proteins. You don't need to consume carbohydrates to get glucose. Now, it does take time to turn the fat into ketones. It's going to take between 3 to 5 days. It all depends on how damaged insulin is in your body, how damaged your pancreas is. If you are a pre-diabetic, if you are a diabetic, if you have insulin resistance, it's going to take longer and longer to adapt. But by lowering the carbs and going on intermittent fasting, you'll get there a lot faster. That explains how to get in ketosis. You lower the carb and you lower the frequency of eating. Now, why would you want to do ketosis? What is the big benefit of doing that? Well, you're going to lower insulin, and most people have high insulin. Rarely does your doctor ever test you for insulin. They'll test you for glucose, but not insulin. If they did, they probably would find higher levels of insulin. The test that you would want to do is called HOMA-IR, and that will pick this up. Too much insulin causes insulin resistance. Insulin resistance is behind prediabetes. Insulin resistance is behind metabolic syndrome, high blood pressure, fat in the gut area right through here. And prediabetes leads to diabetes. So in reality, diabetes stems from high levels of insulin at a certain point. And so keto and intermittent fasting will lower insulin. And that is the big benefit of doing this. There's a lot of other benefits too. You can reduce fat in your liver. You can improve your cognitive performance. You can improve your mood. You can help decrease blood pressure, decrease low insulin at a certain point. And so keto and intermittent fasting will lower insulin. And that is the big benefit of doing this. There's a lot of other benefits too. You can reduce fat in your liver. You can improve your cognitive performance. You can improve your mood. You can help decrease blood pressure, decrease inflammation, improve your energy, and decrease your belly fat. But the real big benefit that allows you to do this eating plan is your hunger goes away, okay? Without being hungry all the time, it makes it really easy to do long-term as a healthy lifestyle. And there's even an additional benefit if you're doing intermittent fasting, that's autophagy. Basically what this is, it's a recycling of garbage in your tissues. So all the damaged protein, the protein that your body doesn't need, it's clogging everything up. Guess what? Your body will recycle that and turn it into new amino acids. That's one of the big things about autophagy. To do this, you have to fast at least for 18 hours. So the combination of keto and IF work very, very nicely together, because if you just do keto without intermittent fasting and your metabolism is slow, you may not achieve your weight loss goal or your other goals, because it would take a very, very long time, and sometimes it's not going to work. Why? Because the frequency of eating in general will trigger insulin. So the frequency of eating is actually very, very important in relationship to you lowering insulin. All right, then you have this concept of a healthy keto plan versus dirty keto. Of course, we recommend the healthy keto, and this basically is higher quality ingredients, grass-fed, wild-caught, pasture-raised versus conventional type foods right here. With healthy keto, you're focused on nutrient-dense foods. With dirty keto, you're really just focused on keeping your carbs low. When you do healthy keto, you end up looking a lot better than doing the dirty keto. All right, the rule of thumb is end up looking a lot better than doing the dirty keto. All right, the rule of thumb is don't eat unless you have hunger, okay? Unless you have the sensation of being hungry. When you're doing the healthy version of keto and you're doing enough leafy greens and vegetables, okay, and you're doing enough healthy fats, and you're improving insulin resistance, you're not only going to be full, but you're going to be satisfied. Now, if you look at the pie chart here, we have about 5% carbs of your total calories, and then 5% vegetables, which, by the way, actually adds up to a lot, because if you look at the carbohydrates and vegetables, you minus the fiber, giving the net carb, it doesn't come out to a lot of calories. So if we look at the total carbs, which would include like berries, hummus, nuts, and seeds, there's a little bit of carbs in those, and you combine the vegetables, that's like 10%. And we have 20% protein, and then we have 70% fat. Now, the fat looks like a lot, but realize fat is basically double the calories of, now the fat looks like a lot, but realize fat is basically double the calories of other macronutrients. But if we actually look at an actual plate with your food on the plate, if you just look at it like this, to keep it really simple, half the plate vegetables, okay, a quarter would be protein and a quarter would be fat. But because protein and fat usually come together, that's going to be pretty much half your plate. That's what it should look like. The benefit of the vegetables are the vitamin C, the minerals, other nutrients, and phytonutrients. Okay, I'm going through this really fast, but I'm just giving you a summary. In the next few videos, which I'm going to put a link down below, I'm going to talk more about exactly what to eat when you're eating. But I wanted to give you the simple overview of all the most important things. So now let's just put it all together. Ideally, when you wake up in the morning, if you keep your carbs low, you're not going to be hungry. So you want to skip breakfast and push it forward to the point where your breakfast now becomes your lunch. So don't eat in the morning. You can do coffee or tea. So ideally, your first meal would be at lunch right here, and then your second meal would be at dinner. So you're doing 2 meals a day. If you keep this within a 6-hour window, that will give you an 18-hour fast. Now, what's really magical about 18 hours is that's when the autophagy starts. You start getting some really cool benefits. The way that you're going to avoid snacking between the meals is you're going to add a little more fat with this meal and this meal to be able to go longer, okay? And then as you start doing it and becoming more adapted, you can kind of cut back on some of the fat, because you're going to be burning your own fat, and your own fat is the healthiest fat you can burn. But the key is this 18-hour fast right here. If you have to snack within your eating window, fine, if you need to do that, but we don't want to snack after the dinner all the way to the next first meal. You can drink fluids, you want to take electrolytes and B vitamins for sure, and sea salt, that's a necessity, but we recommend that you don't eat anything. The common foods that are really good to focus on would be pasture-raised eggs, okay, organic if at all possible, shellfish, fish, sardines, meats, organic, cheese. Now, a lot of people don't do well in cheese. Cheese has a lot of hormones. It's not good for people with prostate issues. It's not good with people that have allergies. So some people do not do well in cheese. Personally, I do a small amount of cheese, and if I'm going to consume cheese, it has to be grass-fed organic. I usually get European cheese, and I don't have a tremendous amount, but you can overdo it with cheese. Olives, that's a must. Avocados, lots of vegetables, 7 to 10 cups, very beneficial. Nuts, for some people, they don't do well on that, especially if they're prone to kidney stones. You have to be careful with almonds, okay, as well as spinach. So I'd avoid those if you're prone to kidney stones. Also, seeds like sunflower seeds, perfect on a ketogenic plan. All right, here you have it, the basic ketogenic plan for beginners. So if you want more knowledge on how to create a healthy body, subscribe now and get daily notifications.
Сколько здесь контента, сколько приложений.